All right. Welcome to the Cubicle Liberation Podcast. I am Joshua Fletcher. My friends call me Fletch, so you can call me Fletch. And I'm here with
David Hood.
David Hood from Dallas, Texas. And today we're really going to get into what in the world would make the two of us actually come together and build this podcast. And I think that kind of backstory and the reasons that we have for that are going to really help you see what you have to contribute based on your own life experience to people and helping them really solve their problems and kind of kind of triangulate and put together kind of a plan of attack of why you should consider working online, putting your own business together, and things like that. One of the things this is going to do, I think, for each of us, David and myself, is let us kind of really help you see what our life led us to understand about what's valuable and really what becomes important. Sometimes very quickly. We're going to get into a little bit more of the backstory of kind of each of our lives. And if you stick with us to the end, I think one of the things that we really want to bring about on this podcast is looking at your own life and understanding what you can do to help people solve problems that they have in their life. And David, do you have any comments on that before we kind of kick things off and get into things a little more
Yeah,
deeply?
real quick, so elaborate on your last point
Mm-hmm.
would be like, so what problems did we look to solve in our lives, and what problems can we help you solve, or at least, work towards solving in your life? And maybe sometimes I think just identifying the problems is one of the most difficult and is parts. And so some of the problems that we bring up, you might be like, hey, I didn't even think about that. That is a problem. That is something that I would like to do better, or improve, or whatever, or something that I didn't know to do. So that's
Yeah,
it.
no. So what that helps me kind of like look at, I don't know about you, David, but like just kind of in general, people in today's society, day and age, and all that kind of thing, conversations they have, like social media, watching television, grabbing a drink or a meal or whatever it might be. The conversations tend to be kind of cursory. They tend to be surface level. Not that they need to be deep, but they by and large, not a lot of people talk about very, like, really important or pivotal moments in their own life, their own understanding. And one of the things that we want to be able to do with this podcast and this kind of series is to get a little deeper. Like, kind of, one of the things that's provided so much, like, depth and flavor in my own life is having meaningful conversations with people who have done things and have experienced things, and in that way, being able to kind of have a dialogue with folks that really have kind of been through some stuff that can help you and help me and help all of us see things that are a lot more important than what was on TV last night. That's kind of really the gist of I think what we want to get at within this kind of this specific episode as well as this kind of series. And so, for me, when I went to the internet to figure out a solution to my personal problem, which very different than David, but it's interesting that each of our problems, even though the problems were very different, our life experience had been different, the circumstances that we found ourselves in when we really kind of made this move were very, very different. The solution was the same.
Mm.
And so I think that's one of the things we want to draw people's attention to is that even though we all have very, very different backgrounds, a different life experience, a different path that we've walked, different things we can add to the conversation or things we can help people see, very often I think the solution actually is very similar in that what we need to do is to help people solve problems they have in their life. And the program I bought that solved the problem in my life was the exact same program that David bought to solve a very different, I guess, problem, like air quotes, if you could see me right now, problem in his life. And, the solution was the same. The problem was different. David, do you have anything to say about that? Before, yeah, I've got a lot,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah,
jump in
I'll
here.
kind of elaborate on my specific situation to kind of like elaborate on how our situations were different. So I didn't not have money. I was making like $85,000 a year at an engineering job, which a lot of people would at the time, would say that's a great job, and it wasn't working in a coal mine. But my problem wasn't like needing cash now, needing to like turn on to get like electricity or whatever, or to like pay my bills. My problem was sort of like looking at it like my long-term happiness. Like I just wasn't happy, and I was kind of like I projected myself forward, and I thought, if this is my career for the next 20 years, I mean, just like that's not my life. I don't choose that. One thing that I felt like I was getting.
Hey,
Oh,
David, dig into that a little bit more and unpack that. I think that's
sure.
really a thing that a lot of the people that we can relate to and help are kind of in that situation. I don't think that a lot of people like are just in this crisis moment, but
Yeah.
if they really flesh out that scenario and they look at like, man, in 5 years if I'm doing the same thing, or 10 years, like I've got this vision of what my life is supposed to be or I want it to be, and this track doesn't seem to lead there.
Yeah. And so you might as well like, you can't. I couldn't quit right away. Like I didn't like as soon as I had this conversation with myself, I didn't quit right away. But I was like, I knew that it was going to happen. I was trying to do it as soon as possible. And kind of a little hack or a little way to go about this is kind of have a conversation with yourself in the future, in the past. So just kind of envision yourself. I was actually kind of, to a certain degree, putting myself into my future, and talking to myself 20 years from now, talking to myself who had worked this engineering job for 20 years, and just kind of like the feelings that this future me had, were just not good. I mean, it was just like really negative, and it was just super depressing, wildly depressing, to think that I would spend the next 20 years of my life. And you think about like, oh, it's only 40 hours a week, but out of 168 hours in a week, but really it's a lot more than that, because you narrow it down to, okay, waking hours. You also narrow it down to what about your commute? So it's basically like 5 days of the week is like the centerpiece of your almost entire day. So 5 out of the 7 days out of your week, and maybe you get a little bit of vacation here and there. And I think really just thinking about how you're going to feel at that point is going to really help motivate you to find another solution, to find something that gives you that makes you happier. And it's going to keep you at it, because in order to get to the place where you need to be happier, there's going to be things that you're going to have to do that you're not going to want to do. And I'm not saying like unethical things. I'm just saying there's going to be like things that make you uncomfortable. They're not again, not unethical or not amoral, but just things that you don't want to do. And even if you're creating a business about like a hobby that you really love, there's still going to be business aspects of it that you're not going to want to do. You don't want to do your taxes, but you got to do it. You don't want to do your bookkeeping, but you got to do it. You don't want to, make kind of businessy decisions, but you got to do it. One critical thing for me that was also a really obvious selling point, and it's a lot easier to contrast it now than it was then, which was that I felt like I was kind of getting dumber every year. Like, even though I was technically in a position that required like a high level degree and a lot of it, a certain level of experience, a lot of the stuff that I was doing was just kind of like rote and repetitive, and not it's not so much fun, but just like not very interesting. And I didn't have a lot of choice in in doing this. I had very little. I had some autonomy, but didn't have as much autonomy as I would like. The freedom to not just the freedom to choose what I wanted to work on, and this was very important to me. Kind of a free spirit in a way, and so this might be fine for other people who want to be told what to do. That's fine. I'm not judging that. For me personally, being told what to do and to not being able to kind of like chase certain, not chase, but just kind of like follow paths that are very interesting to me was super super important to me. So I really really looked at that, and I thought, man, I just like I can't. if I here's actually the actual thing I said to myself. I said, if I'm still working here in 20 years, it's my own damn fault. I have nobody to blame but myself. And this is my life. I don't want to live somebody else's life. I don't care that other people think I have a great job. Everyone in my family, not all my friends, but most people would think you have a great job. What are you thinking? You have kids, you have young children. I had when I quit my job, I had I had a newborn. What are you thinking, you idiot? But it's like, but I'm living my life. I'm the only one that that can choose this. No one else can choose this for me. No one else will choose this for me. And so I had to make that decision, and that was it wasn't like for your story. There wasn't like a critical moment where it's like I had to do it. It was one of those things where I kept telling my wife. I talked about it for years actually, and at some point it was just like, look, I can't stop. I can't keep talking about this. I just got to actually do it. At some point you just have to do it. There's only so much planning for it you can do. You kind of have to launch to a certain degree. At least that's my opinion. And because you're not going to know, you're not going to be able to. There's not going to be if you're working a full-time job. There's not going to be a plan that you can just you're going to get right now. That's somebody's going to give to you. You're going to be able to walk step by step, and you're not going to have any issues, and it's just going to work the first time, every single time. That doesn't exist. And so there's a certain amount of believing in yourself. I really believed in myself. I really believed that if I put myself to it, and I work harder than I did at my previous job, but it's much more satisfying. So.
Okay. No, that's huge. I'm actually going to ask you a couple more questions based on that. So one of them, just very recently, you said you actually worked at this like harder or more, or with probably a certain degree of creativity that didn't exist in what you were doing for your day job, right? That's one thing I want to kind of unpack and look at more deeply. The other thing is, like, for people who are not going through this, it's not like a period in your life, but we all have internal dialogue and thoughts, and we consider the job we're in or the path we're on and things like that. And there's kind of two like magnets, right? And one's repelling and one's pulling us toward, that are negative and positive, right? One of them is something we don't want to experience, with like, oh my gosh, in 20 years if I'm doing this same thing, I'm going to be just older and less vibrant, and while I might have some money in the bank that I've saved up, I'm really going to have let some dreams pass that are going to be harder to get older and later in life. There's like that negative side, and then there's also this positive side that's aspirational, that's like, oh my gosh, I can have a second or a third home. We can take these vacations, possibly, if that's what you're into. I can spend more time with my family. I can help teach my kids. I can sleep soundly every night, not worried about things. There's kind of this negative and positive. Could you talk a little bit more about like which one of those felt, or how much time you spent or attention you spent on one versus the other, or is there a balance?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really talk about the positive as much as I did the negative, but there was a lot of the positive. There was like the freedom to choose. I thought of also, kind of taking vacations when you wanted to. And it's not like, I don't want people to think that as soon as you quit your job, you're going to be able to work 4-hour work weeks and you're going to be able to spend all the time you want with your family. But, I do 4 days of the week, I pick up my kids from school. I work a lot and I work hard, but, when I'm, when I want to, I don't have to ask for permission to like get off. So that was one of the big things, was just sort of having a freedom. If there's something, having the freedom to choose what I want to do on a daily basis. And like, for example, if there's something that I maybe I kind of knew this to a certain degree, but I didn't know it fully. But if there's something that I don't want to do, I either say no, I choose to eliminate it from my actions, or I give it to someone else to do. And so, that was part of it. There was a lot of things that I hadn't done in my life, that by having kind of this job where it was heavily constrained, and I never really had like a lot of vacation. I never really was able to store up a lot of vacation. You kind of earn vacation. I mean, it's like a day of vacation that you earn per month or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so when you are at the point where you don't have any vacation, it was sort of like, well, when am I ever going to be able to earn it? Because, sometimes you get sick. Sometimes you have like kids things that you got to go to. And so those kind of took up pretty much everything. So, the negative I think is really good as well, because nobody wants to waste their life. There's kind of a saying which like, don't let the music die in you. There's tons of people all the time that they've lived their whole lives and they let the music die in them. When they die, like the music just dies with them. There's things that they could have given, not just to themselves, but to the world, but they never nourished. And I really wanted to nourish that. I really wanted to give myself the potential to flourish. I wanted to kind of get back to also sort of like my childlike curiosity. That's part of the get feeling dumber every year. That's one really great thing about the internet. There's just unlimited things to learn. There's so much uniqueness. It's such an ever-changing environment to where there's always something new to kind of learn or understand. And that was really, really interesting to me. I don't think I'll ever, know everything there is, because as soon as you do, there's something new. So even if you could, which I don't think you can, anyone really can. So I think it's the positive and negative.
Yeah. So again, kind of one thing you touched on, you mentioned was like that childlike curiosity. I get the sense, okay, because we kind of walked very different paths. When you get into a job, a career, really career and job are different, right? Because career is kind of indicative of the vision that you're going to be doing this type of thing for a long period of time, right? And while you might, grow in your experience, you don't necessarily grow in like these completely new directions. And so like this childlike curiosity you mentioned, of just like almost fascination with, other ways you can apply yourself or things you can get into, it seems almost like, antithetical to a career concept, which is I'm going to have more experience. I'm probably going to be better. I'm going to earn some more money, but it's not going to be just this newness every day that I'm looking at. Is that right or wrong, or like how would you respond to that?
Pretty close. There's definitely in my business, there's definitely some right now. There's repetitive stuff that needs to be done, and that's fine, and that's part of it. But at the same time, there's a lot of room to explore new things. I'm always every week I'm trying to learn new things, and like let's give the example of my engineering career. Really wasn't a whole lot of new things to learn. There really wasn't like a lot of areas to grow. I mean, maybe I could have grown like politically in terms of like relationships within the company.
Right, of actually moving up in your job, your company, and things like that, right?
In terms of technical skills, like there really wasn't new technical skills for me to learn. And while there's certainly going to be some industries and markets where that's not true,
while you're on that, contrast that with now, right? With working online, and so I think this is going to really help people see how different it can be.
It's as we kind of mentioned before, there's kind of like an embarrassment of riches and opportunity. There's unlimited opportunity for personal growth with what we're doing, with what I'm doing. And sometimes you do need to stay focused. There have been periods where I've just been like laser focused on SEO and just like doing as much as I can to practice that, to create case studies, to test it, to do as much as I can every moment for that. And that's still SEO is still a significant portion of like my time and energy. At the same time, there's unique opportunities to where I can go, oh, that sounds interesting. That could actually help my business, so I can justify it to kind of like myself and my family. At the same time, it's interesting and it has a lot of potential. And I just like trying new things. And so I can just go, does that fit with my objectives? Does it fit with my priorities? And then if it does, then I can just go after it and try it. And if it doesn't work, well, like part of my job I think about is trying new things. And some of those new things will not work out. Some of those new things will end up not being what I really want to do. And that's okay. And that's actually pretty liberating to kind of have that as an agenda.
Yeah, so that's kind of like almost like R&D, right? Coming out of engineering world, like how do you like what concept do you have of learning new stuff versus like just operations and getting things done? Like, do you allocate a certain amount of time or attention, or does it kind of go in seasons, where there's times when you're like purely operational, other times when you are, kind of more like exploratory and getting into new stuff? Like, how does that work
Yeah,
in
that's
your
a really good
life?
question. I didn't think about that. It definitely fluctuates. There are
Okay.
periods where, like, a new opportunity presents itself that you just like, oh, I didn't even think about that, and or it didn't exist before, and so you kind of explore that to the point to where explore it to see if you need to explore it more. And then there will be periods where, yeah, it'll be like, okay, I know pretty much exactly what I need to do, but I just need to actually go and implement it and implement it myself, or train other people to implement it for me, or guide the processes. So there's definitely periods like that where it's just like, okay, I just need to like get to work, and I kind of have a plan and I know what I need to do. And then there are other periods where it's like I will have periods where I'll just like, okay, well, I have the things that I need to do on a regular basis, the things that I've obligated myself to do. I'll put a bunch of time into like personal development and growth and testing and trying, like working on like either a new opportunity or something that amplifies my current opportunities. So it does fluctuate to a certain degree, and I can choose when and what to do for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've worked with a lot of people who are kind of either getting started or actually kind of getting a solid track of what they need to do. And yeah, kind of one of the, I guess, primary questions is, how do I allocate my time,
Mm.
right? How much do I learn, and when can I understand that I've learned enough that I need to apply?
Mm.
I wanted to kind of get at that.
Okay.
Obviously, you probably got a lot more to talk about in that angle, but I think that's, in a certain way, people who are looking at getting into a new venture, whether they have a job, whether they don't have a job, whether they, like me, were completely broke and needed money ASAP. It's kind of like, well, do I need to learn more or do I need to do more? I think that's almost like kind of the crux of this bigger question of what we're trying to really get at
So I
here.
think that I can answer that to a certain degree. So it comes down to like having your kind of priorities in line and putting things up against your priorities. And then also, you should always pretty much be doing. There should be like not a ton of time of just learning. Sometimes there is, but there pretty quickly you should translate that into actions. So every time I'm, taking a training or something, I usually don't like work alongside it, but I will, when something comes up and it's like, oh, I need to do that, I put it sort of like in my this week or next week's action items list. So it's like, okay, oh wait, that's a really good idea. I need to implement that here in my business. Okay, and I just go and I put the action there, and then I go back to the training. And so while it's not done right away, it's done in short order. And so I think the doing should be significant, but that doesn't mean you have to do while you're studying. And there can be periods of extended study to kind of like understand. But like with SEO, you just go ahead and do it. The good thing about our industry is that when you do it and it doesn't work, it's not like complete failure. You didn't die. It's you didn't get your life isn't over. You tried something, and that's actually kind of learning. It's a data point, especially with SEO. You can't learn SEO just by studying. So there has to be a significant amount of doing. Definitely, 100%. There's got to be some doing. But in like when how much time do you devote to that? Man, it really really depends on where you need to where you are and what kind of actions. I would probably like go, okay, I want to, let's say I want to learn SEO. So you buy an SEO course. Okay, you start taking the course, and what I would probably do is either follow along, but I think it's a little bit better for me personally, and maybe for other people, to kind of keep a running checklist of, okay, so first take notes, but then also be like, oh, here's an action item. So I need to research this. Okay, so add to item, research this. And I wouldn't get like really far. After you get like a certain amount of checklist items, you probably should stop and just work those checklist items. If you get like a list of items and you just let it keep going and going and going and going, and you never actually do the checklist, it's going to become demotivating at some point. And you need to actually do those. So I don't want to do too much about like time. It's more just about like doing it until it's kind of completed a set.
What, like, it's really funny as you were talking about that. I was like, oh my gosh. So, like, when you're doing a list of like things to do, right? That's kind of a common way of approaching organizing a day or your life or whatever it might be, right? These are things that need to be done. And, there's an approach to that where it's like the more things that I identify that need to be done, the better off I am. Right? It feels like you've built that list even more comprehensively, and now you have a better picture of what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But really, what you've done is created more work that you think needs to be accomplished before you can actually achieve results. And so, yeah, this to me is just, it's really at the crux of why certain people achieve health or wellness or, whatever it might be, influence. A lot of people spend way too much time creating longer and longer lists that are more comprehensive, but identifying that list doesn't always, it very rarely actually translates to succeeding and actually achieving the result.
Yeah, you
So,
actually work the list at some point.
yeah, at a certain point, if you have a list that has 3 things on it, you can actually achieve them, and then you're actually are better off. In a certain way, I wanted to kind of use that as a segue into, contrasting your experience and your approach with where I was when I went
Yeah, let's do
online,
that. And
which
I'll ask
was,
questions.
it's like, I needed, yeah, this is great.
Are you
I kind of like
prepared,
this back
sir?
and forth. Oh my gosh, I got to strap it down, put my seatbelt on. But yeah, when I say jumped online, it wasn't like, it didn't feel that good, but it felt like the only place I could go. Right? I had, in one way of looking at things, a lot of academic education. I had a lot of experiential, education, hands-on stuff. I'd made money doing a lot of different things, and good money too. But everything that I'd done didn't necessarily lead me to seeing how I could connect with the vision I had for my life based on where I was. And so, kind of long story short, if you've listened to kind of our backstories or know things about me, when I kind of wound up in this moment in my life where frankly, I had the utilities turned off on our house. I was fairly newly married. My wife was pregnant. I had a 6-year-old daughter that she had when I met her that I needed to take care of. And the list of things that I needed to think the list of things that I needed to do was singular. The only thing I knew I needed was more income. And because I'd kind of come out of a situation where, or not even come out of it, I was still right in the middle of it. I had a construction company. I did what I think was good work, right? I achieved results for the clients I worked with. As I kind of unpacked that and differentiated things, what I realized very quickly was I needed more attention, more phone calls coming into my business. And, as I looked at that a little more directly, I needed traffic, and then I needed to make sure that traffic.
Hold on a
was the
second.
right
I do
people.
want to go down
Go.
that path, but I want to
good,
really
good.
take a step back and focus on kind of like your feelings in the moment of like realizing, kind of thinking you're kind of having, were you having a conversation with yourself about, wow, I've got to take care of my family, and I want to explore your feelings there. I also want to ask you a question. Did your wife have a job at that time? Was she bringing in income, or was it just you?
So yeah, my wife does hair, right? She's a hairstylist, cuts hair. She's done that her entire life,
Okay.
right? From the time she was 17, that was what she kind of went into. She learned a trade, so to speak, which I am very much like supportive of. I think that's probably relatively the best way for most people to go through things, to get kind of an internship and figure out how to do something that people value and make money with. So yes, she was, working. She had her own business,
Or was it
had
enough to
her own.
bring your
No, yeah. So it was just for a lot of different reasons. It was not bringing in a ton of money,
okay.
right? One of them was that she was kind of looking at pregnancy and what she was going to be able to keep up with as
Sure.
she got
Can't
more
be
and more
up to a
more and
point.
more full, right? So
Sure.
there was that, and then there was also just kind of I think everybody's life, we tend not to plan for the future as well as we could or should.
Sure, of
And
course.
so there was kind of some of that. And there was excitement of a new relationship, and we neither one of us were necessarily working as much as we could or should have because we were just happy having met each other. And I got to step into the role of being a father, which is something I always kind of I had a lot of respect for, and really always kind of wanted to feel with Matea, our oldest daughter. And so there was a lot of things that kind of came together, as well as just the stuff of my business and the kind of the weird projects that I'd been involved with. But kind of getting back to that feeling, um,
Let's do a
yeah,
specific moment. Let's do the moment when your wife calls you. Let's go back to that and says
uh,
it's
yeah.
turned off. I hate to bring up bad feelings.
No, no,
I think it can help other people avoid that situation before it gets there. That would be really helpful.
yeah, I would love to help people avoid that. I don't know how practical it is to. One of the things that our brains do is, we don't pay attention to stuff. We don't always have a great, kind of radar for how important things are. But, literally the moment that my wife called me, I was in an attic in, Glendale, Arizona, which is just outside of Phoenix, climbing around on rafters, which meant that I had to make sure my hands and my knees were placed in the right spot, or I would poke my, foot through somebody's ceiling and have to, fix that and pay for that and all that kind of thing. So it's rather like precarious
And hot.
and extraordinarily hot. Like if you guys haven't experienced 145 degrees with not any air movement, it's really really uncomfortable. And lugging tools up there, thermal cameras, manometers which measure like air pressure differences and things like that. I had to climb through attics as my kind of protocol for assessing someone's home performance. That was just what I did every day. And I was literally in an attic. I had an iPhone. I was kind of excited because I could set my wife's ringtone to be different than everybody else's. So if she called me, I would be like, oh, I'm going to pick that up because it sounds different than if just somebody else had called me. And so I got a call from, Natalie, who was, pregnant, and I was excited, and at the same time I was, I knew I needed to be doing more and more work and figure things out. But there was that call really, it wasn't a moment of clarity, but it was like this moment of waking up to a much greater degree. I think that at different periods in our life, especially I can just speak personally, leading up to that, there was like some like honeymoon-ish type thing. There was oh, it's all going to work out fine, but there was like gray area fuzziness, and there was like just like a general mood of I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm sure it's going to work out fine. And that moment was it really shone light on the fact that that fuzziness is not something you can take action on. And so, my wife calls me. I get the ringtone. I pick it up. I'm in an attic, and she kind of she tells me the water had been turned off, Matea, our 6-year-old, was at school. She wanted to give me a heads up to figure out what to talk to her about because she was not going to be able to take a shower at home. She would either have to go to grandparents' homes or, which then led to all this other stuff, right? Consider that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, Matea, you've got to go to my mother-in-law's house to take a shower, which then means all this other stuff, right? I got to talk to my mother-in-law. Like,
Social
there was a lot that
implications
went
of
on,
that.
right? I
Now she's questioning you as a valid mate for her daughter, right?
a lot of stuff. Yeah, and there'll be a time I'm not trying to. I'm very open about this, right? But getting into all that psychological, kind of just junk, like you very quickly realize, yeah, it doesn't matter how I feel about this.
Okay.
This is what needs to be done. I
That's
need
fair.
to have more phone calls coming in.
Yeah.
I don't care how I feel. There was an initial feeling, and I sunk into it for 15 seconds. But what it did was really wake me up to say,
What do I do about
none
it?
of my feelings matter. My feelings are really invalid at this point because they've really led me to this point in my life.
I think that's
And okay, that didn't work. I need to do something different. I need to think about this properly and actually take action that's going to get us in not just a better path, but a completely different way of approaching what we are doing with allocating resources, which are attention, time, whatever we might have.
yeah.
So, I finished up that job, which typically takes, a couple hours. I jumped in my 1972 International Travelall. That was, I'd say bright orange, but it wasn't bright anymore.
Right.
It has a maroon interior. You've seen pictures of it, Dave.
Yeah, I have.
Kind of check that out. Yeah, and I love the truck, but driving across town, which was probably 30 minutes away, was when I gave myself kind of a little bit of time to consider what options I had, right? And I think that approach, like figuring out what options you have,
Mhm.
is something that gets overlooked a lot.
I agree. I think that you did something super, super powerful there, which is like when something bad happens to you or you find yourself in a bad situation, it's okay to have like that moment or that time, whatever's appropriate of like upsetness. It's okay. It's okay to be upset. But then the best thing that you can do is as quickly as reasonably possible is to get into, okay, well, now what am I going to do about it? What can I do to get me going in the direction that I want to go? Which it seems like you did really, really promptly, which was very smart of you.
Yeah, I'd like to blame it on smart, but maybe it's
Need?
actually the opposite, which was yeah, need. Right. It's like, okay, I don't have the time right now to like fully investigate this.
Right.
Right. Like I need this to get this down to something I can act on.
Like tomorrow
Because
or today.
tomorrow, like literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
Today was option A, but it was late in the day, and I had to have some conversations, and I had to kind of look at what I had, and to kind of I guess jump ahead a little bit. One of the things I realized was, I was in a house. I was in America. I owned things. Some of them being T-shirts, wrenches, like just I owned stuff that I could sell,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so while I was broke as far as liquid cash went, we have this amazing thing in America that are called pawn shops, and people have an impression about them, and there's a lot of questionable characters that do a lot of things there, but it turns out that they gave me the option of monetizing things that I owned to get to a place where I had a different foothold, which was, knowing and being able to act on, what ranks in Google search engine stuff. I haven't really, I guess, communicated it in such a way, but really pawn shops and title loan companies, were what got me to this opportunity. Which, again, we kind of look at these things, we go to them, they got old sporting goods and, frisbees and, guns and rings and all this other kind of thing. That's really what I went to once I figured out learning search engine marketing was the thing I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
The way I raised capital was to sell tools and things I owned, including, getting, effectively selling my truck and several of the tools I owned to afford the training and, get the water turned back on and all that kind of thing. I think a lot of people are, in a certain way, are like, they look at their bank account and whether they have money there or not. They don't look at their entire life to understand what they have. And like, a lot of the tools I had, they were good, they were valuable, but I hadn't used them in 6 months or a year
Right.
or whatever. And I realized that like if I cleared out everything I owned, I could have, just $10,000 or some random number, right? It's like if I had $10,000 and then no distractions, I could really put some stuff together. And so what I did was I took a big step that direction. I sold a bunch of the stuff I had. I got cash for it. I had less distractions because I knew the only way forward was for me to, fund my education of learning how to get more phone calls and business coming into my construction company. Traffic.
Seems
Yeah,
to come back to
it was
that
a thing.
quite often. Huh.
Yeah, I as we kind of get into this more and more, I think that's going to be one of the things that just my own personal experience would lead me to be able to help people with the most.
Well, it seems like
If you've got traffic, it changes everything.
yeah, you can have a mediocre product and a mediocre like sales process, but if you have enough traffic, you can still have a very thriving business. Not that I recommend having those two things, being be mediocre, but if you don't have traffic, I mean, even if you just had traffic and you didn't have those other things, it's a little bit easier to kind of fill those out, I would think. Then obviously it depends on the scenario. So the fact that you kind of were able to focus on traffic, it did help that you had like we talked about before, you had a conversion process and you had a product or a service to sell, and so it allowed you to kind of be laser focused. I also want to point out like that you don't have to get to these thinking. I think it's important for people to think about these moments where I'm really thank you for sharing. I mean, it might not be an easy thing to share for some people, to admit, hey, you know what, the utilities were turned off for my family. I wasn't able to, like, that moment, I wasn't like providing what I would, presume that I would want to be able to provide, and being able to think about that and try to not allow yourself to get to that point. I actually had a similar point. It was actually after I quit my job. Fortunately for me, my wife has like a relatively highly paying professional job, so it wasn't quite of like, oh well, like we weren't completely out of money, but it was pretty close. Nothing got turned off, but if I didn't figure something out or get a job pretty soon, I would have probably might have hit one of those moments. So hopefully you can, like you said, you look at your life as a whole and you can avoid getting to these moments. You can look forward and say, if I continue on this path, I might actually have one of these moments. I might actually have a moment where it's no longer about like what I want or what I feel. It's about what needs to happen right now. What do I need to do right now to move forward? What's the thing that I can do that moves me forward the most? So it wasn't for you. It wasn't offering new services. It wasn't trying to sell better. It was traffic. And you set out to solve it and you were focused on it. Laser focus, right?
Yeah, David, like one of the things I want to just kind of retouch on, and I think it speaks volumes, is, we kind of led this off with that question you had of like the emotion, like what was that experience like? And I think that drive back across town helped me really see that, like those emotions are just really, really, really dangerous. It didn't matter what I felt like doing. It didn't matter what, seemed fun or whatever, it the emotions were misleading almost across the board,
Hmm.
right? I needed to be able to get out of emotions completely. A lot of people are like, oh, you've got to own it. You've got to connect emotion with what you desire, envision, all that kind, like all that stuff. And what I realized was that, my emotions had got me to that point, right? Doing things that I thought felt good or felt like the right thing. They turned out not to be that way.
Hmm.
And what I needed to be able to do was to make decisions that didn't have a massive emotional influence on them.
Right.
And, yeah, yeah, yeah. You can comment on that however much you want, but, emotions were in a certain way the major problem,
Hmm.
right? Being very emotionally driven. Not that I was, just all over the board and whatnot, but that being able to look back on it now, I can see it a lot more clearly. But even in that moment, I was like, well, it doesn't matter what I want to do. This is what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. No, I mean, I think that sometimes so you have like a lot of the emotions are rooted in the what I call look, not what I call, but what people call like the lizard brain, and I guess there's kind of the middle brain as well that they're not based upon completely accurate information, and so they often can lead you astray. And so it's really, I mean, I still think maybe smart wasn't the right word, but I think it was uh, really correct of you to just focus on, okay, well, what do I need to do? What actions do I need to take to get myself to the place I want to go? I think it eliminated a lot of the kind of the fuzzy generalities for you and just gave you the specific thing. Oh, if I just do this, kind of focus on this kind of one area, then I feel you know, feels not the right word. I think that it can turn things around for me.
Yeah, isn't that interesting though? Even just in the way you speak, like we all speak this way.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, it feels like that. Well, it's like pay attention to the way we like that you speak, not you specifically, but
Right.
like if you pay attention to the way you speak, it gives an indication to the way you think,
Hmm.
and then that's going to control or dictate a lot of the actions you take, your life, and all that kind of thing. Like just being able to pay attention to yourself and what you're thinking about and speaking and considering can really open up a lot of clarity on being able to see like what got you to the place you are now, and also maybe what can take you out of that
Yeah.
and get you to a place really rather be.
Well, and
So
let me ask you this, one of your motivations for doing this would be hopefully, it would be, I think, is to help other people either avoid or if they come to a similar situation to be able to get out of it as soon as possible. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
yeah, no, we kind of started this episode today talking about like why are we doing this. And for me, I've done a lot of different things in my life. Um, One of the things that I gravitate toward, I guess, or it seems that I'm kind of in the middle of a lot, is just really relating to people, right, and understanding or being fascinated with or interested in how people got where they are in life, right? What they know, like people are brilliant in the things they've seen in their experience, but at the same time, a lot of times if you have a really good or deep conversation with people, you tend to uncover things that are kind of astonishing, right? Either in how people approach things or see the world or their situation. Norms are a much more impactful thing than people realize, meaning that you tend to kind of be like the people around you. For me, because I've gone to graduate school at Harvard and got A's. I've been homeless. I've lived in cars. I've been in jail.
Oh, that's
You
another
know, I
story. I haven't heard
That's
that
a
one.
whole different story. And one for a different time. But like I tend to have experienced a lot of different things. And so, contrast, right? I've been in jail. I've arrested people as well, right?
That's funny.
They're seeing both sides of that situation have let me see things. It's like, oh wow, you know, it's very interesting what you can see from both sides of that experience. Um, I think in large part it has been one of the motivations of why I've gotten really into this, and I want to not just teach, but I want to help people see things that I've experienced, and really more than that, not just I want to help contribute to people generating and using methods that we can all use to analyze our life, our opportunities, what needs to be done to help people solve problems. And as much as anything, that's really why I want to kind of be involved with this kind of podcast and this project.
So
You know,
processes and methods,
Yeah.
kind of another. I think it's synonym to a certain degree for helping people kind of grow, move towards their goals to a certain degree. Is that a good way to put it? Right.
Yeah, because I think so. Kind of getting back to like emotions, I've been in situations where, I do like a goal setting workshop, right? And you get in state, you elevate your, confidence, and you've got all this stuff, and you just go through and you say, this is all the stuff I want in my life, right? And you write it all down, and you attach it to meaning, and you put a timeline on it and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, then the problem is that when my mood shifts, I get out of that state, I can look at that same piece of paper and be like, ah, man, like it doesn't seem like I want to be a helicopter pilot now, or I want to own my own private island, or whatever it might be, right? And so much of this is the process of personal development and self-help and all that kind of thing is so state dependent, right? Emotional state dependent. And what I realized as I kind of got into this more and more is that we really need to have a process that takes that state out of it. And it can become more intellectually driven. Not that intellect is the be-all, end-all, but what it does is it operates the same every time if you can get it right. And so I think that as much as anything is what I want to help people see.
Yeah. Processes and methods that in general create clarity and focus and understanding. If I'm kind of rewording or slightly.
Yeah, no, that's great. I tend to use 1,000 words where 15 are better.
No, it's there's nothing wrong with that. Please don't think I'm
totally. It's just two ways of approaching it. I appreciate being able to use clarity is huge, right? And so being able to say things in a few words is really very, very important. And so I really like us working together in this way, because it really helps hone people in on the importance of state independence, right? Being able to just say, well, if I'm going to make a decision, it needs to be based on sound, proper reasoning and thinking.
Yep.
Versus what I feel like.
Absolutely. It needs to be something that no matter what state you're in, you'll basically reach the same conclusion. And it's also kind of independent, should be independent to a certain degree of, like, how do I put this? Is like processes and methods that like work in just a wide range of contexts, and that really can make a big difference in so many different ways, and can get you to the right place. As we talked about another one, I'm huge on like process over results. It's actually better to have to do the right thing and get the wrong result versus the other way around. And the analogy being buying a lottery ticket. Buying a lottery ticket is generally not like a good process. Even if you win and you say, was this the right decision to make? And I would still say almost certainly not. right? It's still the wrong decision. It's still the wrong. It's not just the decision; it's also the process that got you to the decision. Why did you make the decision? Was it a gut feeling? Was it an emotional decision? Well, that's not a good reason to make a decision or methodology.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of cultural things that come along with that, right? We watch like reality TV. It's not really reality. It's all contrived.
Right.
And it's, there's all this emotion involved and characters and, relationships and all that kind of thing. And, we tend to think like you watch Entourage and like that's somehow reality, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to be the lucky one who hits it big, and then I'm going to bring all my friends along. That's a great story, right? It's popular, but it's not a good bet. It's not what you really want to design your life based on. So
ultimately,
yeah.
Good processes win out because you're going to have to, regardless of what you're doing, whether or not you're doing it intentionally, you're using methods and processes to make decisions every day, every single day. And there's so many of them that, well, there are probably some people that get by kind of wing it, or, they maybe don't have good processes and they get kind of lucky. It's not something you can depend on. And for most people, that's not okay. And if you're looking for, I like the phrase, inevitable success, like success that, it's going to be different, kind of at different rates for different people. Maybe some people are further along, or they don't need as many of the pieces of the puzzle and it takes them less time than you. That's fine. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. But if you're looking for something that will inevitably get you to where you want to go, you need to have a set of processes to evaluate, not just like, what do I do right now, but where am I right now? What do I need to shoot for? What does it even look like? And if you're just kind of like throwing out random things and you don't have a good way to evaluate it, it's pretty much 99.999% of the time, it's not going to work out for you. Well, if you do have really good processes, eventually, by and large, there are obviously exceptions, but by and large, 99.99% of the time, eventually it will work out for you. You just keep moving in the right direction, keep making decisions well, keep having good processes for things. Eventually it'll work out for you.
Yeah, I think that's almost like maybe like a tagline that we have on what we're doing here is making decisions well.
Yeah.
It's very easy to be caught up in whatever's going on and emotionally make decisions or pay attention to things because of, how the default mode of our brain works and all that kind of thing. And it's not necessarily set up to help you succeed. Your brain is set up to help you survive.
Yeah.
And what we're really looking at doing with this project, this podcast, is to help people succeed and excel and not just survive.
Not just
yeah. We'll kind of run with that as we move along, but it's a huge thing, right? Your brains, your feelings, all that kind of thing is really about survival. You need to consciously interact with your brain to really shape decisions and thinking to succeed, excel, and really kind of not just get ahead, but be able to live the life that you have in your visions, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Cool, David. Well, we talked about this topic and concept of why what it was that each of us wanted to do this because of. And I know we've kind of talked about it from the emotional side, decision making side, our own personal experience and things like that, but this is really especially when you get into the ability to make decisions well, it's a duplicatable, replicatable process. And I think as much as anything, that's really what we want to help people see, experience, and utilize as you're figuring out what you want to do to get free of your, cubicle or day job or current reality or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I like that. Sounds good.
Right on, man. Well, I think this is a good place to stop as well as any place. And, we'll continue delving into concepts and topics as we move along. But this has been a really good episode. I think it's a good dropping off place for us to talk a little bit more about kind of the vectors, right? The influences that we have on our life, and emotions being a huge one, right? And those being things that pull us in ways or directions that are not always good directions to move.
Yeah,
And
I think this leads into several different podcasts. That if you're listening to this at this time, look for these podcasts to be either already there or in the future. I think like a whole podcast on, well, how do we make decisions well? What are some processes that can lead us to good decisions? How can we interact with our emotions in a healthy way to where we can, acknowledge them to a certain degree, but not be owned by them, not have them put us in bad decisions, bad places, and several other different topics that I think are directly related to this.
yeah, that's huge, David. As I kind of think I'm kind of in the mode and in the moment right now as we're recording this, but that's really such a massive distinction that I know I would have been better off learning and being aware of earlier in my life is that just what you feel like doing and what seems like the thing to do at the time. You need to have a different process for figuring out really what you should do and what's going to lead to success and safety and contributing to other people's wellness. Very different process than what you feel like doing or what seems like the thing to do at the time.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that is a good place to stop it. So thank you for listening to the Cubicle Liberation podcast, and keep listening.
We'll catch you next time, everyone. Signing off for now.